Hello and welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Srikanth, joining you live from India's startup capital, Bengaluru, and let's take you through the headlines on this edition of ET Now Startup Central. Forbes India Rich List has the usual names but also has a few surprises. Who's made the cut and more importantly, who's out of the list this year? We tell you on the show. Software giant Microsoft is confident that its cloud offerings far outweigh its rivals after being selected by the government in a panel to provide cloud services for the government. Info Edge is happy with their listing in India and has no plans to list abroad. We bring you a conversation from Info Edge's Vice Chairman Sanjeev Bikhchandani. What Internet did to the world is what blockchain will repeat. That's the word coming from Shankarchand Banerjee from NSE and Johan Toll of Nasdaq. Speaking exclusively to ET Now, both experts believe blockchain will change the digital payments landscape and disrupt the system the way the Internet did 2 decades back. We take it to the top story then, and I guess e-commerce has really been the flavor this week because one after the other, all the players have been announcing plans for Diwali sales, and the latest off the block is of course Amazon. Now they have finally come out with their date for their great Indian festive sale. That's going to happen from October 1st to October 5th, which is exactly a day before Flipkart and Snapdeal, which is scheduled between October 2nd to October 6th. So clearly a lot of discounts to look forward to as far as next month is concerned. Now what's on offer here, quite similar to Amazon, to Flipkart and Snapdeal. Amazon says that it will offer the best deals, the best delivery mechanisms, and an added bonus if you're an early user of Prime. Now this festive sale is going to be really crucial, a make or break almost, because it will determine who's really been able to claw market share, and it will also determine if Snapdeal has been able to regain market share that it's been losing to Amazon in the last few months. So clearly a lot riding on that festive sale, and we will be bringing you updates on that over the next few weeks as well. Moving on to our next story then, and talking about e-commerce, guess fortune for the Flipkarts promoter Bansals, Sachin and Binny Bansals is not looking too great. If you look at the Forbes list for the 100 richest Indians this year, because after being on that list last year, Sachin and Binny Bansal are out of the list this year. Remember, this is coming on the back of a series of valuation markdowns that Flipkart has seen in the last few months. But there are, of course, a few other surprises. Now, the name that's really no surprise there is Mukesh Ambani, who continues to be India's richest man with a net worth of $22.7 billion. But guess who's made it to the list this year? It's Patanjali's promoter, Acharya Balkrishna. Remember, he has a 97% stake in Patanjali Ayurved, and his net worth is now $2.5 billion. Now, the other prominent debutants on that list include the Turakia brothers, Bhavin and Divyank Turakia, who we had a few weeks back on our show. Remember, they recently sold their venture Media.net to Chinese investors for $900 million. That's how they made it to that Forbes rich list. So clearly some surprises there, but Mukesh Ambani clearly continuing to rule the roost. Away from e-commerce, finally then, we move on to software giant Microsoft, which is betting big on its cloud offerings in India. Now, we did catch up with Microsoft India chairman Bhaskar Pramanik. Now, remember, Microsoft was recently selected by the government to be part of a panel of cloud service providers who will give these services on all government projects. Now, Bhaskar Pramanik is betting big on that, and he also told us about the traction that Microsoft's cloud offerings have been gaining in India, particularly among startups in the last couple of years.
We're very pleased that we're one of the first companies to make this huge investment to set up these 3 cloud data centers in India. So they became operational in October last year, and the adoption we've seen thereafter has really been huge. Whether it is the government, whether it is enterprises, especially the regulated industry, whether it's the SMEs or whether it's the startups, I think we've seen a huge growth in terms of the adoption.
And what has really changed? Because as you said, India has always been strategic to Microsoft in the last 2 decades, but we've seen more action in the last couple of years, last 1 year. Is it because of many things coming together in the ecosystem, wider adoption? Just take us through, what's really changed on the ground.
So I think it's it's a belief that in India there is a developed market, there is an emerging market, and there is an underserved market. And I think over the last 4-5 years we've harnessed all of Microsoft. The 7,000 employees in engineering, in the development center, in the R&D, in the global technical support, the sales organization. And we are trying to focus on how do we invest in each one of those. 2 years ago, we were obsessed by competition. We focused on products and technology. Today, as a company, we are focused and obsessed about our customers, and we are focused on innovation.
Right. Last couple of questions, Pramanik. I read a few months back that you were quite critical of the government's cloud policy in terms of empaneling many companies as opposed to giving it to those who have expertise in executing these projects. What's really changed on that front, and what do you think the government needs to do in this regard?
So I think they've announced a number of companies which have been impaneled. I think they've already shared that with some companies. We did receive a note yesterday, I think, which talked about the fact that Microsoft has been impaneled. We'll wait and see what happens thereafter. From a competitive perspective, we stand head and shoulders above in terms of our offering. Compared
is it going to be easy
else.
Working with the government? A lot of private IT companies always talk about staggered payments, a nightmare to really chase down officials. So why are you so keen in this field?
So I think the economics of computing has changed. So previously, when the government did everything themselves, they had to buy hardware, they had to buy software licenses, they had to go get system integration work done, and the initial investments were very huge. And most companies had to make those investments, especially for turnkey projects. And therefore, the challenge was that huge capex, if the government didn't pay you, you were at risk. Now you think of some of the solutions which we've developed. Let's say for the, you heard about the program we did for Andhra Pradesh government for education. The startup costs are very low, and you basically pay for what you get, and even that is a fraction of the cost you had earlier. Right, so I think that's the difference, that with this new technology, the government can do many things with it at a fraction of the cost, and therefore we're not having any problem in getting our payments.
And this will encompass a wide variety of projects, if you can take us.
That's the possibility. I mean, I think there's many different projects which which the government has, which can all run on the cloud. And if it's on a public infrastructure, the costs are much lower. They're paying it on a subscription kind of a basis or per use case kind of a basis.
Away from Microsoft's India plans to one of India's seasoned internet entrepreneurs, we are of course talking about Sanjeev Bikhchandani, the promoter of Info Edge. Now my colleague Sumit caught up with him in New Delhi to really find out about his plans for Policy Bazaar. Remember, Policy Bazaar has been in the news for its plans to list on NASDAQ next year. We asked him about that, and also about Zomato and the path to profitability as far as that is concerned, because remember, they recently saw a valuation markdown by HSBC. Here's what Bikhchandani has to say about his portfolio companies.
We have no plans to list on NASDAQ. We are listed in India. We are happy to be there.
Okay. So fintech and education tech are two new fields where many companies are going now. Do you have any plans to go there or do something?
We have already got our own business called Shiksha.com, and we have an investment in a company called MeritNation.com. Plus, we have invested in PolicyBazaar.com. So we are already there in fintech and in.
Okay, now my question next is again PolicyBazaar.com. What are your plans there? Any plans to maybe go further, invest further, or come out? Any plans you can share from there?
There are no announcements we have to make on Policy Bazaar right now.
And on Zomato, what are your views? What are you going to do with your...
So Zomato is doing really well. It's growing fast. It's cutting burn. It's heading towards break even and profit, and it's got enough money in the bank. So therefore, Zomato is fine.
It's fine. So, and going forward, you think because of so much happening across this food space, you think there's still some value left there, or...
Zomato is doing really well. It has revenue has more than doubled. Its burn has come down by 80% from a year ago. And to my mind, there is not just value left there, there's value being created there.
Sanjeev Chandani not giving too much away there, but I guess we should expect some action on Policy Bazaar because its CEO Yashish Dahiya has been speaking about a possible listing very soon. We will look forward to that. But moving away from that to a subject that's all the rage now, and we are of course talking about blockchain because people believe it's expected to have the same impact as the internet had on the world, basically an open ledger system that will connect the world. And to really find out more about the impact that this is going to have, my colleague Krishna caught up with Sankarshan Banerjee of NSE and Johan Tal from NASDAQ to find out about the impact that this will have on digital payments going forward.
It's a very evolving technology. It has been around for a while. The underlying implementations are quite mature, but where we use it, how we use it, that's still evolving. Why the average Indian should care? Probably because it is going to make some processes much simpler, much cheaper, much easier, and it will happen in the next 2, 3, 5 years. If you sell a house, you need to have land records to show that you own the house. If you sell a car, you need to have records to show that you own the car. Those things have traditionally been very hard to overcome. And blockchain gives a very elegant solution to that problem, which makes life a lot simpler and, removes many layers. It removes the cost of administering those layers. It removes the time delays involved in those layers. And it allows parties that are unknown to each other to establish trust and exchange things. And so it goes across almost every kind of commercial transaction.
The most important thing about blockchain is that it provides infinitely better security for transactions and for data than what exists right now. And that's, sort of like the USP of blockchain. How does that work?
Correct, but technologies become widespread when it doesn't require a super programmer to create blocks. Eventually, every ordinary person will be able to create a block. Blockchain, the security is in its design. Every single transaction is encrypted using an individual's key. There is no super administrator. There is no this business of bribing somebody or the national government being able to change your record. Those things don't exist. Because your record is signed by you and only you can change that record. If anybody else tries to change it, the change will become quite obvious to everybody, including you. Fintech companies today are not defined by the need to raise large capital like an Uber or a Flipkart, where they need that kind of capital base to compete. Fintech companies, if they have a good idea, they find a very welcoming ecosystem in India. The ecosystem in India is quite active in encouraging fintech.
How far along is India when it comes to blockchain, and how good is the ecosystem for the development of blockchain here in India?
So I've been seeing a lot of fintech companies in India coming up on blockchains. I would think that there's at least 20 or 30 of them in India, if not more. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of them that I don't know about. But it's been a very active area of fintech exploration.
Another very important aspect of blockchain, when we talk about blockchain and financial technology, is that blockchain has the potential to create greater financial inclusion. Would you say that's true?
Oh, yes, because what happens is today, there is a certain cost to establishing the infrastructure for financial transactions. That is because it's quite heavyweight, it's very hard to do that in the remotest village in the country. Today cash management, for instance, requires all this complicated infrastructure to establish that the person who's going to receive the cash is indeed the person who's supposed to receive the cash. If blockchains come up and make this easier, then you'll see financial inclusion happen far easier, because then you don't need this complicated overarching infrastructure to reach into these common corners of India. Western markets, they do a lot of incremental innovation, but they're all very, there's a large, mature, set oiled machine, which is very hard to disrupt. Unlike us, we are a relatively open market, so we are even a large disruption can easily be absorbed by us. Whereas, a market that is very well set can improve the way it does things, but is very reluctant to throw away what it did for 200 years.
The blockchain is a catalyst for change. It's a possibility to improve the current processes and reduce the risk, speed up the transactions, and also possibly you're going to see how some of the intermediaries can be cut out of the formula. So that's also very interesting. Us in Nasdaq being an exchange, being clearing houses, running CSDs, we definitely want to look into this as well to see how can we streamline our existing processes, or will we to some part also see how as part of our business will be moved on to blockchain. And then we want to be there. We want to be the first, the pioneers to be able to run this.
So can blockchain change the way stock markets function across the world, and more importantly, not just change, but replace it?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. So for sure, we believe it can change, or it will change. It will take time though. We have a lot of processes, we have a lot of practices in the world already. So it will be a slow pace, but it will change for sure. The relation between the investors, the buyers and the sellers in this technology, and also the relation to the exchange, clearing houses and depositories, it will change the way we act today. Currently we can see how many processes takes a long time, and we see opportunities for how the blockchain can streamline a lot of those processes.
How does blockchain remove processes, cut inefficiencies, remove layers of transactions, and establish where a situation where an intermediary becomes defunct?
So blockchain works through cryptography, very advanced cryptography, to be able to actually, instead of having a central operator, think about the central bank, for example, handling all the money, the issuance of the money. What blockchain can do is more or less to replace a central operator with a network. And issuance, trust, security all comes from the technology.
You see the big tech giants of the world also taking the blockchain apart from startups, like the likes of, say, an R3 or a Chain for that matter.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see two paths here. Both that the existing FMIs, financial market infrastructure providers, they will be able to improve the business and incrementally change and improve the business in a good way by using the blockchain technology. Then we're also going to see startups. We normally start to compare how the Uber revolutionized the taxi business to Airbnb, the hotel business. And similar, I think we're going to see other startups to take use of the blockchain technology and use that as a way to disrupt the market and create new business.
Once a blockchain becomes a full-fledged reality, companies like Uber and Airbnb would have been left not required, as in they would become obsolete if we were lived in a blockchain world. That's true as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's the way we see it.
How?
Because you could view Uber as the central operator of the network. For me, as wanting to hire a taxi, and the taxi driver, they stand in the middle of actually servicing that connection between the driver and the buyer of the service. And that's exactly what blockchain is meant for, to actually replace the central counterparty.
The middleman, right?
Yeah, the middleman, so to say.
We hope that conversation really gave you a peek into what to expect as far as blockchain is concerned. But with that, we come to the final segment of the day, which is Number Crunch, the number of the day, and that number is $7 billion. If you're wondering why we're talking about $7 billion today, that's the amount that Vodafone's parent will pump into its India business. Couldn't have come at a better time, considering this comes weeks after Mukesh Ambani's Big Bang Jio launch, and they're really going full throttle as far as the schemes on that are concerned. And of course, it is coming ahead of the crucial airwave auction that we will expect in some time. So the best time for really Vodafone India to be ready with that ammunition. But a lot of jokes going on online that, a lot of paying subscribers really hoping that Vodafone uses the money to improve network and reduces call drops. With that, we come to the end of this edition of ET Now Startup Central. We hope you enjoyed the show, and keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.